So we have our first panel discussion of the day, and this is on outlining the challenges for intelligent digital transformation and Indian enterprises, and basically identifying the challenges and how they are looking at mitigating these challenges. So lady first, I would like to call on stage Satkeerthi M. She is a CTO of Bharti Airtel. Can we have you on stage, ma'am? Vaibhav Tewari, co-founder and CEO of Portea. Can we have you on stage, sir? Radhesh Battu, Associate Director, Acentra. Arpan Mukherjee, Chief Technology and Product Officer of Reliance Digital. Can we have you on stage? What I would like to maybe, to each of the panelists, I'd like to put a common question. One, as I mentioned even earlier, this digital transformation is now being bandied around for almost close to a decade. But in reality, when we talk about digital transformation of an organization, what are the main milestones that an organization undergoes? That is one. And more critical is perhaps now an organization is not just its own employees, but it's an extended ecosystem, which involves whatever suppliers, partners, customers, and who not, the whole ecosystem. So if the digital transformation happens of the individual organization and then it happens in isolation, then the whole synchronization might not work. So Satkeerthi, I'll start with you. One, this main milestones in the digital transformation journey, and how do you involve all the stakeholders in the same plane?
I think a very, very apt question in the current scenario or what we've been working over the last couple of years. Digital transformation is now, let's just put it this way, it's the in word that everybody is talking about. But it just comes with not just an overall, transformation per se, but it also looking at the existing platforms that are there in the organization across verticals. And when we talk about key stakeholders, we just don't refer to stakeholders within the organization. We also refer to stakeholders outside the organization who help in developing the same. But one key aspect, or rather, I would just say very important for all of us to consider is the end customer or the impact on the end customer that you're trying to bring in through this digital transformation. Keeping in mind that, I think when you start any digital transformation, first you need to look at what is it that you want to transform, what is the impact it has, and then as you're doing it, you also should have a plan that when there is a seamless jump from your regular work to the digital transformation, there is no impact on the end customer. You take anything for that matter. I mean, I would talk from my industry per se. We're looking at actually having a complete, we've been talking about CRM platforms for many years, but having the capability of building a platform, keeping the base as a CRM, and then having the required technology built into it to have analytics, just put in data, like we said, like data is like plutonium and everything. Take the data in it and be able to transform it to what is visible to the end customer into simple analytics and performance metrics that is there. That can be looked at in totality when you see every layer of milestones that we talk about. So one, I would refer to milestone as saying that build is a milestone. Then you're talking about testing in two different modes or POC that we refer to. But more than that is actually run it with an end customer and see the impact of it before you scale. So when we refer to milestones, it's just not about internal. Obviously, we have a lot of transformational milestones which are there, but I would look at it a lot more holistically around this.
Okay, thank you. So primarily, if I may sum it up, one, have a base level and then build on it, and then test it out with the customers, and only then scale it up.
Customers can be internal and external.
Internal and external, right.
Key stakeholder which actually
has the impact. Okay, great. Point taken. I'll come to you next, Vaibhav, on your views on the same question. This is the same question I'll put to all the panelists.
See, from our perspective, the way I look at digital transformation, and of course we have done quite a bit of that in last 3 years, basically, 3 years back, we had this motto for the company saying we should go digital and we should go to 100 cities. So for some of you who may not know about the company Portea, we are India's largest home healthcare services company. So what we do basically, all the healthcare services which can be provided at home, we go to patients' home and provide that. So India has tremendous infrastructure for providing world-class services in the hospital, right? I mean, India's medical services in top hospitals is as good anywhere else in the world. But once you're outside the hospital, and there's a fair bit of medical care required outside the hospital, and that's where the service levels drop significantly. And our whole model has been to basically provide the same world-class service in patients' homes. And then we can probably provide as critical service like saying ICU at home. So I mean, patients when they discharge from hospital for end-of-life care or discharge for rehabilitation, setting up the complete ICU at home with doctors, nurses, ventilators, paramonitoring, and things like that, to as simple as basically doing geriatric care, medical equipment, and so on and so forth. And I'm just giving you the background because in our case, we have clinicians basically who go to patients' home and support them. And we are doing around 5,000 visits a day across 120 cities in the country today. So in our case, neither the clinicians, and these are our employees who are with us in the office, nor the patients are with us in our premises, because patients are on their homes and clinicians are going from their place to the patient home and supporting them. So it's a many-to-many problem to solve, right? And it cannot be done without having a very, very strong technology backbone and, of course, a very, very strong infrastructure. And, of course, over a period of time in last 2 to 3 years, also digitalizing everything which is possible to do to manage it a lot more efficiently. And when we look at digital transformation and how we looked at it is that basically we look at it in three buckets, okay? And those are 3 buckets saying that what are the things which can improve my efficiencies, processes, and so on and so forth. What can really make an impact from business parameters perspective directly when you work with patients? What do you do with them differently so that, and in our case, patients are the customers. So what do you differently with them so that it has direct impact on your growth and revenues? And third, of course, from innovation perspective, where you can use digital technologies to basically innovate. And for us, basically the milestones are in terms of which of these segments you are able to transform using digitalization. So when I say 120 cities, we have offices in 20 odd cities, right? And of course, rest of the locations we run in a hub and spoke model. And then again from there you have like people who are going to patients' home and supporting them. So each of these layers have to be digitalized, right? When I'm going to the patient home and working with them, how I interact with my clinician who is going out there has to be digitalized. What kind of data is collecting from the patient, and of course, basis that, what kind of treatment plans we are able to create, that has to be digitalized. So that became like an operational layer and the milestones there. Then of course, similarly, in my patient interaction, what we are doing. And then of course, this is the head office and everything else, what can we do? But if you look at holistically overall, each of these steps are fairly independent of each other from the perspective of what impact these make. And our journey has been basically look at milestones in each of those. So when you look at different segments of an organization, which segments you can take first, second, third, that is prioritization. And each of those segments, what can you do? And as of course, she was saying that you have to always look at like a proof point. And then after proof point, you scale it and do that. And for us, it has been about taking a couple of services, taking few branches and automating that and digitalizing that. And then seeing where we can take it progressively to the other places, the other services, and other cities. And in our case, that's how we've been. We have gone. So we've gone geographically, we've gone by product, and that's how we've gone about our digital transformation. Of course, in our case, it has helped us tremendously in, of course, reducing our cost and making the business a lot more efficient than what it has been 2 or 3 years back. So, of course, we always say any investment you make in technology or otherwise, it has to generate results, right? And results have to come from bottom line or from revenue growth or both, right? And in our case, we have seen examples and returns in both of those. And that's where a big quote unquote converts to this actually.
Okay, thank you. One common aspect which you have talked with Satkeerthi also is basically that scale up first sort of experimenting with all the stakeholders, and then once it's successful, scaling up. But you also focused more importantly that digital transformation will help in the standardization across the. So there has to be a standardization. You can do whatever innovations are possible, but that standardization is key. And as in your case, it involves a lot of external stakeholders, may I say the patients, who are outside of the direct hospital premises. So that involves that standardization to a significant aspect. Great. Next, I will come to you, Radhesh, with the same question. What's your views here?
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. I work in the Acentra, so we are going through the digital transformation as we speak, right? So at Acentra, we churn around 25, we process Mediclaim, around 25 billion in claim value annually, right? So being in this segment, the obvious we start one is, and recently Acentra is a merger between two companies. So the first one is to have the vision, right? So it is obvious that the merger is the outcome. The vision is setting is very important, that we want to accelerate the outcome, right, of the healthcare in more efficient and more effective way, right? That becomes the vision. You start and set the vision first. Once the vision is set, the next you go for creating the environment within your organization, right? Start with the leadership commitment, then your employee enablement, and then making sure your employees are cross-skilled, and then the most important is your culture set, right? So as a leader, we need to make sure from top to bottom, there is a mindset digital first, right? You need to enforce that. Create the common platforms, right, where the teams can collaborate, get together, innovate, reuse the components, right? Once that is done, once you have the vision, you have the upskilling. So transformation doesn't happen overnight, right? We just get the tools and automatically it doesn't come in. So we need to make sure that the employees are cross-skilled, they are equipped with what they are to do and how they can transform the processes and improve the processes, right? And the next important thing is defining the use cases, right? So in Acentra, as we say, we operate predominantly in for the federal and state governments, right? So we want to we operate within the players in that segment, right? So it becomes very essential that we predominantly focus on the areas where we play on that. So, for example, we can say FIRE is the new compliance regulations, right? And blend these regulations with IT, right? So that becomes one of the business use case. So that makes the FIRE is predominantly helps you to pushes for interoperability and data structure, right? So that makes it more efficient within the different players, right? So maybe home care, I was mentioning predominantly after discharge from a hospital. So there are care management where you take care of these things. So this interoperability and data standardization comes in picture. So after that, we need to look for the, make sure we have the IT infrastructure and modernization, right? So especially I can talk about my domain where we are pretty much 2 decades old systems still persist, right? So we need to modernize that. So we need to adjudicate the claims. Traditionally, it takes somewhere between 30 to 90 days to adjudicate a claim. So right now we're going through the transformation. We're bringing the speeding up the entire adjudication process, right? So it could be as small as building APIfication of your products, exposing your APIs to the outside world. So make sure your IT segment is scaled up with that, right? Once you have the IT segment sorted, the next thing I would look at is making sure it is scale, and sustenance is the other important thing. It is that once you transform, right, you might, the volume suddenly you need to process the whole, the volume should go high. So probably you're doing X. So after transformation, you want to even go 2X, 3X, right? So that's where you need to make sure your technology is the backbone where it supports to the scale, right? And make sure, as everybody said, it is important that we tie our use cases to the customer-centric, or your business cases are there. And make sure you monitor periodically, measure them, and keep on improvising on that one. At a broader range, I would say these are the milestones as we take this journey of our digital transformation.
Okay, thank you. So another important aspect which you touched upon is the alignment of the business with the digital transformation. The two cannot happen in isolation. There has to be every synchronization, and only then obviously from a business perspective, you have to look at the ROI is achieved. So these are two important areas. You touched upon the skilled workforce. I'll come to it in the next round. Before that, I'll come to you, Arpan, on your viewpoints on this.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me here, and good morning all. Obviously, transformation is the life, right? So that's what we all are like working. So obviously, it starts and ends with customer, right? Like the empathy, like that you are bringing into the business, right? So normally it starts with business trying to solve something, and then technology is coming, and then helping as an enabler, right? So fortunately, last couple of years it has been proven that now technology can drive business, right? So and that's where all the transformation initiative being started, and the piece that it has picked over last 2 years, right? So obviously due to all the different AI enablement and AI, services availability, right? For use has been phenomenal, and with that, we all started like being into the forefront, right? Like where the technology can drive business and improve either revenue, cost, or whatever, right? So if I have to say the milestones, right? So normally it starts with defining the KPIs, right? So where we exactly define what needs to be achieved by this transformation journey, right? So whether it is the revenue improvements or the cost or otherwise or some NPS, or it can be very granular to our operational efficiency on a TAT, on a supply chain or whatever, right? So defining that KPI is going to be, is the key milestone, right? So that we do. The second thing is organizational readiness, right? So normally, in a company like Reliance, which is a huge, right? Almost every business is getting done there, right? Like retail, telecom, and all. So, like getting all the stakeholders, I think already it has been mentioned, like whether we are all ready for this transform journey, right? Upskilling employees, right? So is key there, right? So it is not only just bringing an AI-enabled process or automation here, but like whether all the business and technology employees are ready to use it, right? So is the key. And then also breaking the silos. I think in a previous presentation it was getting mentioned, like that is going to be very another important milestone, right? So where you define the complete data, right? Democratize the data across the company, create the unified access layer, and then ask people to innovate, right, on top of it. And that's where the magic starts, right? So then you get hundreds of ideas, right? So how the transformation can be achieved, how the improvements of those KPIs can be done, and how it can be done better way, right? So I think, yeah, so those like defining KPIs and making the organization ready, and then breaking the silos, especially on the data-driven initiatives, right? So I think are the key milestones.
Okay, so great. So summing it up, one, identifying the right KPIs and breaking the silos in the data when data is driving that transformation. Okay, great. One important thing is we are having as varied a panel. They are representing different sectors, if I may say. We have telecom, we have what I can say, retail, we have healthcare, we have insurance. Different aspects being covered, and these alignments of these, each sector will have its own unique business case, and how you're aligning the overall digital transformation goal with this business case becomes important. Now let's delve on some of the challenges, because that's why unless you don't identify the challenges, things will always remain uh, get blocked at some point. Starting with you, Satkeerthi, one area which I'd like to, the digital transformation journey we know cannot happen on its own internally, because that's not the core business of yours. You are a telco, that's the core business. So you have to work with a lot of third party solution providers, whatever form. Now, and we know typically it's a best of breed kind of environment, but where we work with you with. So how do you align these third party solution providers as partners so that they are also on the same plane, and especially for a large behemoth of an organization like yours, where maybe even for the same things in different geographies, there might be separate partners. So, how is that alignment happening?
I think it's actually a huge challenge today. And when we talk about a huge challenge, it's more about, see, every organization has their vision, right? So when you talk about vision, we have a vision, and at the same time, we're looking at reaching a particular, requirement or something that we set out for in a certain amount of time. So the big challenge that we have is any partner alignment, and I will use the word partner because they partner with us in delivering the end solution. The first thing is alignment in terms of the time that we require and the time of transformation that we do. So that's one thing that, in terms of alignment, is extremely critical. The second alignment is the fact that you have an existing process running, and that cannot get impacted during your transformation. So I just give you a very, very simple example. Is we were supposed to build a simple monitoring platform for one customer of ours, and the ask was very, very simple. That let me know how all the circuits that I brought from you. I need to understand a simple view, and also basis which sector of mine is impacted. I need you to tell me proactively wherever it is. Very, very simple ask, right? When we pick up a use case. But when we go back and try to look at and work with a partner, the alignment as simple as getting the build of the circuit, putting it in the system, building analytics on it, was something that initially when you talk about evaluating, etc., it comes up because we also go through a regular RFP. So there is a lot of evaluation that goes in. Only after they pass is when the partner comes in. So one is technically, while the solution is available, but building it along with a third party partner and building it within your internal system and building it for the customer gets challenging for us. So I think one important aspect is to get that alignment. Second is, I think we need to be very, very clear. It's okay to deliver a solution at a certain point of time, but actually really, really make it work before actually scaling it. Because I think, like I mentioned previously also, that's one aspect that we've learned very, very thoroughly. And of late, our success metric has been that we've been able to build it very well, do it a lot more internally, and then also look at. You just mentioned it a little earlier, saying about skill set, capability, etc. Skill set capability also becomes a very, very important aspect when you're talking about it. It's just not about a partner and the development that happens in this, but also in terms of having the inbuilt skill set capability that we have. Because any process is running up till a certain point of time manually or whatever way it's running well at that instance. But the minute you start getting interventions, that whole skill set capability, how fast you're agile to actually catch up with that, and then be able to keep the seamlessness of deliveries is what is more crucial for us. So I think if I have to sum it up for you, is one, getting the entire use case studied thoroughly end to end, being able to gauge all the challenges, and then actually try and create a small use case, be successful, and then scale it when you go about it.
Okay.
That's more important.
Thank you for summing it up so nicely in terms of, and you re-emphasized on the scaling up part. The skill set part, I'll come onto it. Before that, I'll come to you, Vaibhav. You mentioned about 120 locations that you are present. Now, in a scenario like India, when we talk about in India, it's multi-geography. Within India itself, it's so varied, and we know, however advancements we have made, still the standardization of technology, there is still lack of uniformity in terms of it can be the quality of connectivity, the quality of infrastructure. So when you have this multi branch kind of scenario or that sort of structure, again, and we talk about digital transformation, how do you achieve that standardization?
I think for any digital transformation, and that's our learning. I think it's a sales project before you do anything else. End of the day, especially for a company which has been running for some time, you have to get the stakeholders together. You have to sell the project first. We always look at saying that you can do it top down. You can give all the directives. You can create use cases with everything, but people have to see what is in it for them. And I believe that for us, that has been the biggest challenge to surmount. And of course, that has been the biggest plus point also as we are able to build it as we gone along. So you get some champions who will come together first saying, okay, if I do this, my life will become easier. In our case, I mean, think of a location like a Pune or Hyderabad, and somebody's managing, say, 500 patient duties every day. Okay, there's tremendous work because it's like we spend close to 15 to 20 lakh hours in patient homes every month. Okay, think of somebody who's managing it, the caregiver or nurse coming to your house and dealing with your tantrums and the caregiver's tantrums every hour, every day, right? Because fact is, it's a manpower based service, right? Of course, you can use technology, you can aid on top of that, but end of the day, a good nurse, a good caregiver, a good doctor is the core product in this, right? So somebody who's doing that, how do you make sure that they buy into it and say, okay, if I use these products or if I use this platform, my life will become easier. And that's something which has been the biggest thing for us. So basically selling it to people, saying once you do transformation, this how it will impact your life, what in it's for you. And as you rightly said, the more remote you are, the more difficult it is for you to use it, the more difficult the sales process becomes. Saying that, okay, first I have to learn how to use it, first I have to get trained on all of that, and then my job may not even remain. Other problem with some of the digital transformation happens is that some of the layers go away. We learned that ourselves. And especially if you're in remote location, when you're not with head office, you're not talking to people daily, you always think, will my job go away? What will happen with this? This is making me redundant. So I think those are kind of challenges which we saw to overcome. And that's why the selling and continuous selling becomes very important. And for us, first 1 year was very critical because you have to sell to people, you have to make them see the value. And of course, then come on board. After that process become easier. This example is saying, okay, you did in that particular process. That's see how your life will become easier. Now you can go home at 8 o'clock and not 9:30 at 10 o'clock. The people see value like that, right? So to my mind, that's something which has been the biggest challenge which we have overcome. Standardization, of course, you have to keep standardization at different stages. So you keep at head office, then you keep at regional offices, then you keep at zonal offices, and so on and so forth, right? And there will be challenges because in our case, digital transformation also includes a caregiver or a nurse using the app all the times, right? Making sure that every single aspect of their job is done using an app and all data is captured using the app and so on and so forth. That's where, how do you train them? How do you make sure that if you have attrition, how do you get the next batches, who get trained and who see value in this? I think that's again the same thing. I'll come back to this like a broken record. It is basically it's basically what's in it for me. And the more you're able to do that to the last mile, to the last person, including patients, the easier the life becomes as you go along. So I think standardization in this is about making sure that you are able to sell value to people for every single individual. And that process doesn't change because for a lot of people, 80%, 90% becomes the way of life. But additional 10, 15% people can run their life without this also. So how do you make sure they continuously are able to convert them to this is probably the biggest challenge and the biggest joy also. Once you have everybody using it, life doesn't look better than that, right? So I think that's where I would look at it.
Okay, thank you. So you are advocating sort of an internal selling first and building individual use cases for each internal user so that they in turn ultimately become advocates for the whole transformational roadmap. Great. So we talked about two aspects of the challenges. The third challenge, I'll come to you, Radhesh, with the skill set, which Satkeerthi also touched upon. Workforce. How do you ensure the workforce with the relevant skill sets so that we have very diverse workforce? And again, in a country like India, different generations, different upbringing, different level of education. But how do you ensure people with that relevant skill sets?
uh, for the digital transformation, skill set is very important, right? So without that, even though you bring in whatever the tools, the adaption of that is really important, right? So first, you start off changing the mindset, right? So start building a common platform where the teams can come, collaborate, innovate, cross-pollinate, right? See the advantages of that, right? Creating that platform where people can come together, right? Share their experiences, see what is the value throughput of that, right? The next important thing is creating champions, right? Champion teams to evangelize this entire transformation, right? And most of us, it's a human nature. Any change, we are not going to receive it with open arms, right? So a lot of insecurities kick in. So we need to make sure this change is for the good. The change is for the optimization of the entire process, right? Make sure the comforts of the engineers or the teams are there in place, right? So bringing them to a common platform, creating focus teams, right? And slowly introducing the process changes, right? So now how do we bring this change as well, right? So for example, you have already your core process defined, right? So you do step 1, step 2, step 3 and goes on. So you slowly introduce either GenAI can be a part of your process. You can, step 2, you can just go do some process, bring back the information, put it into the system, and it goes back again to the system. Or you can bring that entire GenAI platform plug into your process, right? So that kind of improves your entire process. So doing POCs, making sure the teams are aligned to this, right? Upskilling them, giving them, showing the value out of it, right? Focus teams. These are the key things I can think of which definitely helps the team.
Thank you. Thank you. So, the idea is to sort of ensure more collaboration and cross pollination between the different members of the workforce so that ultimately they are aligned towards the same goal. Okay, so we have touched upon partners, we have touched upon infrastructure standardization, we have touched about workforce. The fourth big challenge will be the budget. And I'll come to you, Arpan, with that. Say, you rightly pointed out one thing. Apart from its many bad things, one thing COVID at least did was change the paradigm of business. And that digital business or the digital avatar of a traditional business can work successfully. That has got, I think, finally imbibed. So, when a traditional business like yours gets transformed into a significantly digital mode also, and there has been a budget allocated to the traditional business, and things have been following a certain dynamics. Now, this change is happening from a CFO or from the management perspective, how the budgetary issues are tackled by technology people like you.
So, yeah, obviously everything comes with a cost, right? Like all the great AI comes with the GPU cost and make NVIDIA richer, right? So, absolutely. But I think the key was already been discussed by others, right? Like, so first is like the value that we are adding, right? So if it is our partners, our own our own employees or the customers, right? So the change that we are proposing, right, so is going to improve on some of their day-to-day jobs or their outputs or their, I would say, like their opportunity to earn more, right? So if that is the case, right, so how that can be translated to the cost of the tech, right? So that will enable that. is something that we have to prove. And there are different strategies, right? Like, I mean, it's not there is one versus other, but like a couple of examples, right? So one thing is building those platforms, right? So while doing this digital transformation and separately monetize those externally as a digital native capabilities beyond the current use case, right? So that is one. I mean, obviously, open source is the other. We can get some crowdsourcing and then improvements budgeted, right? There are many ways, right? So obviously, in Reliance, we have formed Geo Platform Limited, right? So while building Geo, which is probably the biggest now technology platform like builder across the country, right? Because we are building for hydrocarbon, we are building for telecom, we are building for retail and every other business of Reliance, right? So, and then those platforms are working at scale of Reliance. So obviously, that has proved both the platform capability and the scale capabilities, right? So now monetizing those, getting those capitalized is a good problem to have, and then we are operating towards it, right? So how we can give those cloud native capabilities, AI capabilities to outside world, right? So something that we do. But again, like if I probably take a step back and think when we are starting this, right? Like, and then when we have to convince someone to use this or do this for a betterment, uh, it boils down to like a current way of work or a workflow, right? So which is currently in place or we think that is getting done versus what is actually getting done, right? Learning that, and there are different ways to do that. I mean, obviously, process mining, visualization of the workflow. So we get amazed by seeing the logs, and then if we can visualize that, right? So and then create those workflows. What we initially thought and what has been followed are quite different, and then identifying what are can be like potential improvements and what can actually translate it to cost, right? Something if we do that, and then if we are thinking something like forecasting something and then return to that forecast, right? So if we get that value, right, and then and then translate it to a financial planning, I think that's where the approval comes from, right? So I think yes, the workflows and then the actuals and the differences and the potential either cost savings or revenue generation out of those, right? And then showing that in a more clear, proper way is something that we do definitely, right? So use multiple tools and processes for that. But yes, with that, and then later on, how to monetize those platforms outside is something that we do.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So the last round, I'll come to each panelist, and my question is: Gen AI is one, and but not the only. So all these emerging technologies that we are talking about, Gen AI or whatever other, it can be the augmented reality part or whatever other technologies. So from your organizational perspective, in the next, if I may say, 7-8 quarters, what are these emerging technologies which will either accelerate or hugely impact your digital transformation journey? Starting with you.
I think we'll just start about AI because what it will do is it will actually, there is a big debate that's going on about AI replacing actual manpower, but that's not true. I think what we need to see is AI will actually enable and make efficiency and productivity far, far better. So if you look at today, I think the next 7-8 quarters, we're already in it already. So a couple of things that will actually enable our organization would be the ease at which we do our normal processes. When we talk about normal processes in terms of basic interventions around troubleshooting, etc., will be much more fast track because we have this information there. And as recent as something that we worked, because we have multi-domain, multi-partner ecosystem. So there are different OEMs, different technologies that come into perspective. For any human being who's part of our configuration management, who's part of our NOC, it's extremely difficult to actually have a thorough knowledge about every single parameter. What we've actually got into thing is using LLM and things like that. We've actually started building a complete AI, at least as an enabler engine that gives an engineer at least a thought process saying that, am I following up all these things? Because even if he has a question, that whole information around what is available, what is the best, and giving at least even for an SME to give the key insight at least, okay, what is it that I'm doing that is there. So thereby, it's going to enable him in terms of the faster turnaround times. Second, in terms of building like skill set I mentioned, it was so important for us to do it. Third is our entire business, which is very, very manual, where it requires physical intervention. Today, AI is able to get that whole thing, done back end. So I'm cutting down the cost of sending manpower to field. I'm cutting down the time taken for me to actually attack a problem or provide a solution, thereby enabling us to do business more effectively, be cost efficient, at the same time have a very, very high customer sat also.
Okay. So, great. So, the future, as you may sum up, it's cost efficiency and enhancing cost efficiency, time efficiency, and and especially for a sector like you, where the customer experience enhancement is so key. Yes, that's really critical. Vaibhav, from your perspective, what are the technologies or which will have the maximum impact on the digital transformation?
So from our perspective, if you see last couple of years, I think a lot been focus has been on improving the processes actually. So efficiency improvement has been the big investment in last couple of years. And where we stand right now, there are two new areas or next set of areas which we are investing significantly. One will be how do so we have, and also given that we support like whatever close to 200,000 patients a year, and there's a reams and reams of data which is getting collected from them, right? So how do you make sure that using patient data, doing analytics on that? One is that can we make the business more effective for patients? So can you personalize the healthcare now? I think the biggest advantage of analytics and of course AI is that can you do more and more personalization? And healthcare is an area where probably personalization will happen the last. But I think now with technology being available, I think that's one thing which is happening. So that's one area which we are investing in significantly. So I would say for that, both analytics as well as Gen AI will be important for us, which we are evaluating right now, different technologies and people and partners with whom we can work. So that is one area which is very, very important. Second is innovation. We also work with a lot of clients where we are supporting their patients, what we call B2B2C. And there, what kind of innovation is possible in terms of fraud prevention, in terms of drug adherence and those kind of things for a lot of large pharma companies. I think there again, extensive use of AI and data analytics will be very, very important. So I would say next 8 quarters, these are two areas which we are investing in significantly, and of course evaluating partners and technologies for that. While making sure that whatever investments you have made in process efficiency improvement continue to deliver results, and whatever the improvements we need to do there, we continue to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, very important points that you raised, especially, maybe hyper-personalization for your sector can have some privacy issues, but overall hyper-personalization definitely is the big way, especially in enhancing customer experience for most sectors. Yes, Radhesh, your views.
Right. The Gen AI is there to stay, and recently I read about that in a overall adoption has gone around 47% of the industry is heading towards that. We are in the initial stages. Yes, there is going to be disruption. When it coming specific to our cases, right? So far we saw digital transformation predominantly the robotic automation, process automation. Now with Gen AI coming in, it is going beyond that, right? You're adding intelligence to that, right? So it optimizes your efficiencies, right? For example, I could think of we have partners who submit their claims. So we process those claims into our system, and there are complex rules we run through it, and then we give the final dollar value again back to the customer, right? To our partners. So now in this different touch points here, right? So with Gen AI coming in, we are experimenting different options and see where all we can disrupt, right? Wherever we can improve the processes. So we started off with the bots, which will convert all your whatever your format input is, right? So either text, PDF, document, or scanned, or whatever. So we convert that into OCRs, and then we do a high level of adjudication, right? The validation happens there. So that cuts down a lot of amount of time. So on an average, it takes more than a month, right? Now it kind of cuts down to days to hours, right? So that's where the entire Gen AI is going to make changes. But it's too early to say that. We are there and we're making progress in that area. And now coming to the rules, right? We have our own proprietary rules engine, which was built over 2 decades. Now it has been building on top of it, and so vast that it is humanly not possible to go through it and then skim through it and see where all we can optimize. So we bring in the bots using the Gen AI. We are able to break it down, see there are so many redundant rules running. That is an overhead to our operations. So we can optimize those rule engines, right? And then, as said, there are fraud detections. We are leveraging the third-party partners, connecting to them, make sure that there are fraud detected early. Before initially we used to make the payments out and then realize there's a fraud happened, and then that goes into the fraud bucket. So still there is a lot of fraud happening in this healthcare side of things. So there are different use cases where you can see that. And beyond that, we are trying to bring in the entire Gen AI into your development cycle, right? Is there any developers can use these, capitalize on Gen AI during their development cycle? Maybe they can just run through the code, see if they can optimize that. And probably the QA cycles are getting improved. We are generating the test cases using Gen AI. That's where I'm seeing a lot of process improvements happening there. And we are also using it as to build a knowledge base, right? Healthcare comes with a lot of domain knowledge, and we have people with 10, 15 years in our company, right? Once they go, what happens, right? They go with the knowledge. So we are trying to build the bots where you can just query. If you have any questions or queries, you can question the bots. It gives you information back. And that is one area where I can think of. And also it helps in innovation, right? So where you can build POCs or proof of concepts, right? Customer comes and says, we need this way, these are the things we want to see. Then we can box the chatbot's conditions, and then we can run the bot and see what are the different options. Is this doable or not? That becomes very easy. We are even churning out our training materials out of it. So yeah, there are a lot of things happening on the Gen AI. But as the coin has 2 sides, right? I just want to draw everybody's attention. There is the other side of Gen AI we need to be wary of, right? One is being bias mitigation, right? So as humans, we all have biases. So we build the bot, so we consciously or subconsciously push our biases into the bots, right? So we need to be very cautious there. When you're finalizing or building your bots, you need to be very cautious there. And change management is another big thing. So you cannot just bring in and say that, okay, from tomorrow everything is going to happen, right? So we need to make sure, bring in the change processes, make sure the adaption is there. And the most important thing is make sure that there is the data privacy and ethics is another big thing we need to be very careful upon. Depends on the region, wherever you are. There are different regulations. There are still blurry. People are working out, and I'm sure that will evolve and make sure things will be easy moving forward. Yeah.
Thanks. So the areas where things will move, you are saying adding actionable intelligence and innovation to the automation, and bringing in Gen AI into the development cycle. Great. Arpan, your views on.
So, yeah, it's there everywhere, right? So creating the wow factor from the customers to the bringing the operational efficiency, and now obviously the agentic workflows, right? Like whether it is coding, validation, data visualization, or anywhere, right? Like whether it is inventory, operational, and all. But one thing that we are very, focused on, right? Like currently building the AI capabilities into our operational excellence, right? So I would say it's a more performance engineering, right? So that we are operating on, like how the warehouse picking will happen, how the like a whole dispatch will happen, right? How the loading unloading to the truck will happen, or how like a sales person, right? So who is going to do a B2B or B2B2C kind of a sales, right, to different retailers, distributors should perform. Now there is no right and wrong here, right? So it is very, very situational, very, very person driven, right? Somebody like a leaderboard, somebody like how much money they are earning, somebody likes their achievements, right? So, and somebody wants to compare themselves with others, right? So what to show, how to show is one thing, and also utilizing AI to determine what should be the right workflows, right? Like in everywhere, right? Warehouse, transport, everywhere, and supply chain and all. So it is more about not only just using AI for capabilities of creating an wow factor or a better operational experience, but also determining what to do, right? So so that's where we are currently obsessed, and there are multiple things that we do, right? So obviously from like a look-alike modeling of an agentic workforce versus actual workforce, how they are differed, and how we can do the personalized improvements, doing A/B test on top of that, right? Creating like patterns out of different access logs, right? So multiple, right? So, but ultimately, end result is utilizing AI to determine what to do is something that we are very, very focused on. Apart from what others have already covered, yeah.
Okay, so basically introducing AI with the operational efficiency to increase. Two very interesting things also came up, which one Radhesh mentioned about that the personal biases should not get into the AI, which are the AI challenges. And another thing Arpan mentioned, there is no good or bad. Uh, it's definitely more a gray area. You cannot always demarcate into such black and white. Before we conclude, any question from the audience? Yes, can we have the mic there? Please introduce yourself and
Yeah, hello. Quite exhaustive presentation and panel discussion. We have been talking about digital transformation for quite some time now, and we still haven't reached 100%. We are still around 57 to 70%. Now, that means we should identify what are the challenges. What are the challenges? Some of them you mentioned, like budget constraints or talent availability or skills, digital skills and things like that. So if you know the challenges, we should fix it. We should know how to solve it. If we don't know, we should identify the challenges and then see where we are lacking to reach the 100% digital transformation.
so what's your question, sir?
Question is, where are we lagging? No, we should progress. Whether you use AI for that or use internet or improve the infrastructure availability, server, etc., or data centers, we should know what we should do. That you have to highlight, and then we should progressively attack, and then see that we reach 100%.
You are talking about the solution. What's the question?
Solution, I have not, that's not. Solution has to come from you. The panel discussion give
I
a
think
recommendation.
Very
what an organization should do.
I can take that probably more from medical language perspective. Baby takes 9 months to come out.
Healthcare
right?
also, yeah.
Correct. So baby takes 9 months, and so does every transformation, which will take its own time, right? So we cannot preterm it. We cannot prepone it. I think every organization, depending on what stage they are at,
True.
they will take their own time before it becomes 100%. And all of us have seen that in our own journeys. Anything takes its own time before it becomes full term actually, and that's where we are. So as you rightly said, it's 50, 60%, 70%, and probably different organizations are at different level. Companies started as totally digital native. Probably they started with 100% digital transformation. They didn't need to do anything else. But of course, the world is a mix of all kind of organizations and all kind of things. Second thing is, we always forget technology is there to enable business and enable people. And people have all kind of quirks and challenges and so on and so forth. So we cannot, I mean, this room itself, all of us are very different from each other, right? So if we use same digital technology, all of us here sitting here who are votaries and converts already will respond very differently, right? So I think to my mind, everything takes its own time to fructify. And second, people are the real challenges, whether you see it in skills, whether you see it in adaptability, whether you see it in passive aggressive behavior, whatever it is. End of the day, you are dealing with people and transforming them in how they operate. I mean, I'll give you another example. We always say e-commerce always looks very interesting, right? But till Flipkart came, India Times and Rediff Shopping were the biggest e-commerce sites in this country, right? And we thought, oh, e-commerce has already come in India. Even today, a very small percentage of that is that people are using e-commerce. Does it make more sense for a consumer? Answer is yes. Is everybody using? His answer is no. Will it take probably another 2-3 generations before it becomes fully convert? That's where it's going to go, because that's the kind of time it takes to change the consumer mindset across generations. So that will be my 2 cents on this.
Okay. So there is a maturity curve to the whole thing. Okay, great. So we come to the end of this panel discussion. And before we disperse, I would request Shangamitra Mohanty, co-founder of APAC News Network, to felicitate our panelists with their excellence in technology deployment till date. Can we have the awards? Vaibhav, Radhesh, Battu. Arpan Mukherjee. I would also like to call on stage Henry Isaac of Data Stacks.